Welcome to the Ultimate Rekordbox Guide. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the software to take your DJing to a whole nother level and make things a whole lot easier. So here I have the Rekordbox application pulled up on my PC. So before we delve into how to use this software to benefit you, we need to make sure you can download it properly. So to download Rekordbox, we go to the rekordbox.com website. You scroll around, you see these pictures of Kissy Sellout and Nicky Romero, all these cool DJs. Who obviously know what they're doing, so you should know what you're doing as well by using Rekordbox. So Nicky Romero says, hey, download Rekordbox. So we're going to go to download. Click on the big red button here. Download it for Mac, iOS, Android. I'm going to be going over the PC application, but it's the same on Mac. And there's also a secondary application type for a mobile device. And I'll go over that in a different video, but you know, if you want to, you can download it for your Android or Apple smartphone. And all the features are the same. Cool enough. One thing about Rekordbox is you have to register to use it. So you have to have an account registered with Pioneer, basically. And that gives you a serial number. The serial number doesn't cost any money or anything like that. It's just a way, I guess, of keeping track of things. And then you can see all the compatible units down here where you can use your Rekordbox exported files on. Pretty much anything with a USB drive in the top is pretty much fair game. There is, I believe, one player that has a USB drive that does not allow for Rekordbox playback, and that would be the CDJ 400. But if your unit is on this list, you can totally use Rekordbox, and it'll make your whole life a whole lot easier. So once you've gone ahead and installed that, let's open up the program here. Again, if you have just installed Rekordbox, you're not going to see anything here. It's going to look a lot like this. With no tracks whatsoever. Let's talk a little bit about how this user interface is split up. So in this top section, like most software that has to deal with audio DJing stuff, you have your waveform, all of your cue data, everything that's like really pertinent to what the currently selected track is. That's all in this like upper third section. Moving on from there, you have this collection section. This is where all of your playlists, all your individual tracks are viewable in your library. A lot like how Serato has crates. This is split up into playlists and collections and hot cue lists, things like that. Over on the left-hand side, you have like our file explorer / browser for different types of sources. So collection is just like everything. So this is like all your tracks that you've ever imported into Rekordbox, and I have, I think, 7,930 tracks, 1,000 of which are fully analyzed. We'll talk about analysis in just a second here. So over on the left-hand side, you've got your collection, your playlists, which is a drop-down menu, so you can pull up different playlists that you may have assembled yourself or had auto-generated for you. Hotkew bank lists, we'll get more into this later, but basically Hotkew bank lists is like mini playlists of 3 songs where you have set a specific hotkew point, A, B, or C, on each track. So you can jump back and forth between like 3 different cues on 3 different tracks really, really fast. And that's just a quick way of calling up those cues. iTunes. This is like what's called the iTunes bridge. So in iTunes, you can look at all of your tracks if for whatever reason you're still using iTunes, and you can bridge without having to like copy and paste a lot of files. You can use the bridge in Rekordbox to import all of your iTunes files into your Rekordbox collection and directly analyze the files in Rekordbox without a whole bunch of other steps added. The Rekordbox XML file is your analysis file. That is if you need to change your database location or you're migrating computers, anything like that, that's what the Rekordbox XML is for. File Explorer is literally an explorer for the root directory of your computer. So this is where you can, it's like Windows Explorer basically. So you can either navigate to tracks that you have not imported into your collection yet through here, or you can just drag and drop them from within Explorer. So, you can browse to your music in here and drag and drop them, or you can search for them in here. Now, this next part is what can get kind of confusing to people. So in Rekordbox, you have your collection, which is everything that is stored locally on your computer. That is like your cold storage, let's call it. And your device can be an SD card, it can be a USB drive, it can sometimes be an external hard drive. Just make sure you test your compatibility with CDJs before you go out and buy a 500 gigabyte external hard drive, because sometimes they don't work if they don't have the right file system or they don't get enough power, things like that. So for the most part, this is going to be flash drives and SD cards. So in here, I have my Kingston flash drive. When I click on it, I can rename it, change all my options for sorting on the deck when I go out to play. And the device is like your hot songs right now. So everything you're going to be playing out, or that you could maybe foresee yourself playing out, is what you should keep on your device. So again, your collection is like your cold storage, and your device, be it a flash drive or SD card, whatever, that is like everything that you want to take to the club. Because, and some people get kind of upset about this, they're like, well, I have 8,000 songs and I want to make sure I have all my songs there just in case I need any one of those 8,000 random songs. But in reality, it's really not quite like that. If you're a DJ who is going to be using Rekordbox and you want to be using flash drives, that's probably not going to be a concern. You're probably not going to be the kind of DJ who's taking a ton of requests. You're probably going to be more like an artist DJ who knows exactly what they need to play, and they don't take requests. So you don't have, that's not a real valid concern for the type of DJ that I'm talking about. However, if you do want to take your whole collection with you, there is a way to do that. So if you're on a laptop, right, and you have all of your collection stored locally, you can also access this entire collection on the CDJs without using a flash drive by connecting your laptop directly to the Pro DJ link. And the Pro DJ link is like the Ethernet cables and the network hub that connects the CDJs together. You can also link in your laptop to directly read any of these files. You can drag and drop them onto the CDJ, which is pretty cool. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So when you immediately import a song into your collection, Rekordbox is immediately going to begin analyzing it. And what analysis does is it assigns a beat grid to your track. And the beat grid it's basically specialized for like 4x4 music. But basically, if I load this track up here, you can see there is a very specific beat grid that lines up on every kick. So if I play here for a bit, you see there are red tick marks and white tick marks. So the red tick marks are like the one beat that indicate a bar. And the white tick marks are beat marks that indicate one beat. So when you import the track, it's going to analyze the entire track, assign a beat grid to it, and try to fit it as best it can to match up with that first kick, and make sure that it's consistent all the way through. So that even though when I scroll all the way through this track, we can see that the beat grid is still pretty much perfectly aligned. You can also change the color of this waveform. The original is blue, like this. You can also do a full color RGB, which is kind of cool. The reds obviously show more like bass hits, stuff like that. So maybe your Serato converts will feel a little bit more at home. Also, when it analyzes the file, it is going to be assigning a BPM value, which we can see up here above the waveform. However, Rekordbox is not perfect. In fact, it's not really even as good as Serato, in my opinion, as far as determining exactly where the beat markers need to be, and exactly what BPM value it should be. Like sometimes it'll analyze a quantized 124 BPM track that's definitely 124 BPM, and it'll show up as like 123.95. And then the first beat will be on perfectly, but then by the time you get all the way to the end of the track, you're off by half a beat pretty much. And I think that's just going to be something that they need to tweak in future releases, but it's gotten pretty good to the point where I hardly ever see that anymore. But if after you analyze a track, you import it and it's off, right? So you analyze the file, you load it up into the player, you hit play, and you notice that the beat grid is off. Whether let's actually just punch in 123.99. So now that I've punched in 123.99 BPM, we can see as I scroll further through the song that the beat grid is now misaligned by a couple milliseconds. We can fix this by either typing in the correct BPM value like it was originally, or we can use these beat grid adjustment tools that I accessed by hitting grid on this left-hand side. There are two sets of buttons that you can activate or deactivate. One set is the Q loop, which is where you store the memory points that you're going to access later on the CDJ. And then grid is the beat grid adjustment, right? So if it analyzes it incorrectly or is just slightly off, you should probably come in here and make adjustments. So from left to right, let's go over the buttons here real quick in the beat grid section. This is our metronome right here. So it's you can also increase or decrease the volume of it by just clicking through. So when it's off, obviously it's muted. 1 click is like a third volume, 2 clicks, 2/3 volume, 3 clicks, 3/3, or 1 full 100% of volume. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Sounds pretty okay in the beginning, but let's go back to the end of the track. We can hear there's a delay, and that's because the metronome is activating on the beat grid markers and not where the actual track is. So the metronome is just a good tool, especially for music that maybe does not have so much as far as drum is concerned. It's a little harder to pick up exactly where the drums are or should be in the absence of drums. The next button after our metronome is the key analysis lock button, or beat grid. It basically locks your beat grid from being adjusted further, either by the CDJ, or if someone comes in here and tries to mess up all your beat grid information, then that won't happen, I guess, unless they click that to undo it. So it basically prevents, if you need to reanalyze a bunch of files, it prevents you from accidentally reanalyzing a file that you had already fixed, and it gets reanalyzed incorrectly again. So undo is obviously very obvious, but we don't have anything to undo here. This next section, these next two buttons are probably like the most useful. So it's expand and shrink, right? So you can start on beat. We're started on beat just perfectly, but the further we get down here, right, the more off the beat is going to be. So we want to align this red line with this drum hit right here. Now to do that, we're just going to shrink the waveform. Click, 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 until we line up perfectly. There we go. And now we can see our BPM has changed to reflect that, since shrinking the waveform, or shrinking the beat grid is actually adding to the BPM value. It's making the beat grid basically faster. And again, expand goes the opposite way. Contract. You get the idea. This next middle section here is to help denote where the very beginning kick is, or the very beginning of where you want your beat grid to start. So this will turn whatever line your cursor is on. So we have this like middle white line right here that's the center of the screen, that is like the cursor indicator of where we want the beat grid to start. So if I were to want to start the beat grid on this this blue, I think it's like what, a hat? Yeah, hat. So if I wanted the beat grid to start on this hat for whatever reason, you line up your white tick mark and then select this button to set the beginning of the beat grid. And so now you see that this has changed to a red line indicating that it is the first beat. You can also shift the entire beat grid left and right without shrinking or adjusting it otherwise. but that's not how we want to do it. So usually what will happen in an instance where you want to use that middle marker is the beat grid will just be misaligned by a slight amount. So you'll want to come in here, set your first point, and then check later in the track to see if it needs expanding or contracting. You can also do double and half time. So a really common use for the double and half beat grid multipliers is DJs who, for example, play dubstep, and they like to think of their music as 140 BPM, but Rekordbox may analyze it as 70 BPM. If you want to do some like beat matching and some sync effects on the decks, they all need to be relatively close. So if you want to speed up, or double the BPM value of certain tracks, this is how you do that. To make everything more cohesive in your ecosystem of how you plan out your tracks. So if you want all your drum and bass to be 172 or 174, you can use your double and half values on tracks that are analyzed correctly to get it to suit your style. And these last two buttons over here are for making adjustments to sections of a track that are maybe different BPM. This is like for DJ tools or tracks that have different drum patterns that like switch up in the middle of the song and like transition from like, say, a house song to like a trap drop, something stupid like that. That enables you to go to a section of a track and say, from here on out, I want it to be 140 BPM instead. We're not going to do that on this track, but that's how you would do it, is you select that button and then you type in your new BPM value for everything that occurs after that marker in the waveform. And that will affect only what is after that marker that you just placed in the waveform. So let's explore our menu options a little bit, mainly in preferences. So preferences, if you go up to File, Preferences, this is where all of your main settings for Rekordbox are going to be. This is where you can select how you want things to look, how you want things to sound. Under Analysis, here are some interesting things that you might want to pay attention to. There are two types of track analysis modes. You got normal and dynamic. Normal is for really quantized music where, you know, someone made it in Ableton and it's locked to a beat grid already when it was produced. Dynamic is more for produced works of music that are more fluid in their BPM, that may change or not locked specifically to a metronome. The Allow Analysis While LAN Connected option is to allow your computer to analyze all your tracks while you are linked up to CDJs within Rekordbox. So like I said earlier, you can drag and drop tracks onto whichever deck you want. That is allowing your computer to analyze while LAN is connected. If you have a lower end computer, you may want to not do that. Set memory queue at first beat of track while analyzing. This is an option that I am not entirely sure of yet. I leave it blank, but if you're someone who just wants to import the files into Rekordbox and export them directly to a flash drive, and not have to like do a lot of planning or whatever, this may be an option you may want. The only downside I see to this is if it analyzes the track incorrectly on the first try, not only do you have to fix the beat grid, but then you also have to delete a memory queue and then reset a memory queue. And that's not as fun as just doing it yourself and doing it right the first time. This is where your analysis file is located. Key analysis, always enable this, and then write the value. That's pretty much it on the analysis side of things. Bridge, this is the iTunes thing I was talking about. Device. Okay, this is where you can change some options for your device. So there are a couple of different Rekordbox type players. You have like your CDJs and your XDJs. Those are all one type of library. If you have an R1, that's a different type of library with a little bit different interface on the hardware. Same with the MEP 4000, but nobody uses that, so don't worry about it. But most people are going to be using the CDJ/XDJ option here. Now, the CDJ settings in the preferences. This is where all the cool stuff happens as far as customization in sorting and coloring and hotkeys. This is like where all the cool settings are for making your CDJs, when you go to play on them, really customized to your specific needs. In here, you can change your active and inactive sort options and categories. So sort is what happens when you press menu on the CDJ, and you can like sort by like a BPM or the alphabet. You can sort by your rating on a track level listing of files. So you pull up a playlist that has 100 tracks in it, and you want to sort all of them by BPM because by default they are sorted by artist or whatever. If you hit menu and then click BPM, it'll list all of those tracks in BPM order. And that's this window right here is where you decide what sort options are on the screen to select from when you hit that menu button on the CDJ. You can also select which parameter is shown next to the track when you're scrolling through them. I like BPM. Some people like key. Other people date added because they want their newest stuff. Just depends on what you want, really, what your goals are. Now, the My Settings tab. This is probably the best part. So these are all the settings that you can have automatically pushed to a CDJ 2000 Nexus when you go to put your flash drive in. So when you put your flash drive in on a Nexus, and it'll pop up briefly with a little like display on the screen saying hit menu to load My Settings, and it'll automatically load all of these settings onto the CDJ, which is a lot easier than on previous CDJs when you would have to manually go through the options menu and change everything to how you like it. So this speeds up changeovers and sets a whole lot. So play mode, single, that means that when it reaches the end of the track, it is not going to automatically load the next track in the playlist. Single is what most people want. If you want to play a playlist on your CDJ, continue is going to be the option that you want. Eject load lock. This basically means that if you have it on unlock, you're able to load a track onto the deck at any time. But if you have it on lock, your CDJ has to be paused before it'll allow you to load a new track. I like unlock because, I don't know, I haven't really ever messed that up before, like accidentally load a track onto a deck that's playing live, and it's a lot faster for me to not have to hit pause. So that's what I do usually, is unlock. Auto queue level. This one's really cool because if you have auto queue enabled on the CDJ, it will automatically detect, even if you have no beatgrid information on the CDJ, it'll automatically set a queue point for you to play from. Or you can use it to detect your first memory queue. But if you set it to one of these volume options, it will then wait until it detects that level of volume on the player and automatically set a queue point there for you to start playing from. Slip flashing, this just means that when you enable slip mode, the whole deck will flash, or the whole deck won't flash, but just the options that use slip mode will flash. On-air display, this is the white and red LEDs on the platter of the CDJ. So when you bring the fader up on a track, the deck turns red, and it kind of shows you, hey, this deck is live. Anything you do on this deck will be broadcast through the sound system. So that's what the on-air display indicates. Jog brightness, there are 2 levels, well, 3 levels if you count off, dark and bright. Jog indicator, on and off. Disk slot illumination, this is the white LED on the front of the CDJ for the disk slot to put CDs in, but who uses CDs anymore? Probably not you if you're watching this video. So Yeah, I just leave them on bright because I like bright, flashy lights. Language, yes, you can change the language when you load the CDJ. Awesome. I'm going to keep it on English. LCD brightness, there are 5 levels. I keep it on 5 all the time, even in the daylight. You cannot really even see 5 that well. Definitely need a sunshade, and then 1 is almost pointless. Time mode, you probably want to have this on remaining, but elapsed is also an option. Remaining is just like a countdown, shows you exactly how much time you have left. Elapsed isn't really a great indicator for any DJs as far as I'm concerned. Auto cue on, you can have this turned on or off. This is also linked to the auto cue level we showed earlier up here. Jog mode, there are 2 types of jog mode. There's vinyl and CDJ. CDJ allows you to press down on the platter while adjusting either faster or slower the BPM, and it will not stop the track. Vinyl mode, however, when you press vertically down on the platter, it will act as vinyl mode, allow you to scratch, stop the track, etc. A lot of DJs in like really bass heavy like situations. This used to be a problem with some older CDJs where bass frequencies would accidentally trip the vinyl mode, and so it would cause the track to actually stop just because the bass was so intense. So some people put that on CDJ to avoid that, or if like someone accidentally leans on the CDJ, brushes up against it incorrectly, it won't stop your track playing. Tempo range, so you can preset exactly what tempo range is loaded onto the CDJ when you load it up. Master tempo, this is like key lock, right? So master tempo keeps your track from changing key while you increase or decrease the BPM. It's indicated by a little red light on the button. And if you're going to be mixing, you should probably put master tempo on because it allows you to change up to 16% tempo without any real noticeable change in key or pitch of the track. Quantize syncs all of your looping together. There's really not much else to it. Quantize will only allow you to hit your hot cues every beat. When Quantize is off, it allows you to hit your hot cues at any time and just fire them in a random sequence or whatever. But if you have Quantize on, it only allows you to hit a hot cue once every beat, no matter how fast you hit the button. And then sync, I always leave this off, but if you want it on, go for it, I guess. More power to you. And then our hot cue tab. This is where you can automatically set hot cues to load onto the CDJ 2000 Nexus. This does not work on the regular 2000. This only works on the CDJ 2000 Nexus. Previously, and if you watch my video that I'm going to link on the screen right now, you have to manually call up your hot cues by holding down the record call button and then selecting the cues that you wanted to bring in. Now, keep in mind, if you have your auto hot cue loading setting enabled, it will load all of the hot cues for that track automatically on import. You will not be able to select only certain hot cues for the deck. And that's pretty much it for the preferences section of Rekordbox. Let's get back a little bit to how to set our cue points. So if we switch our window over to cue/loop mode, we can bring up all of our options for setting memories. In Rekordbox, you are allowed 10 regular cue memories, and now you're allowed 4 hot cues, A, B, C, and D. The regular memory cues aren't really numbered, they're just sequential, so you can kind of scroll through them. Basically, how it works is when you load up a track, you will not have any of these red tick marks. You won't have A, B, and C. There's no such thing as auto hot cue settings. You have to do it all manually. And how you set your hot cues and your regular memory cues totally depends on your style. I'm going to show you how I do it, but you might be able to experiment a little bit and see what suits you best. So since I have 10 regular memory cues available to me, which is significantly more than the 3 that are afforded to me with hot cues, I like to set those cue points more as markers in the track more than anything. So I have a marker to indicate at the very beginning of the track where my first kick is, or where the intro starts, and then I have a second marker to indicate when we're in the second part of the intro, and then a third part where we start getting into the main sections of the track. This also helps with the countdown feature on the CDJs. It will show you on the CDJ exactly how many bars and how many beats away you are from the next marker that you have set in Rekordbox. Then I have a couple other points scattered throughout here to indicate when buildups end, when buildups start. Basically, just whenever there's like a really dynamic change in sections of the track, that's where I will usually place one of these memory cues. And just like on the CDJ, you can call between the cues by using the call button here. And remember, the most important difference between regular memory cues that you have to call up and the hot cues is that after you call up the hot cues, you can instantly use them when the track is playing, when the track is paused. If you're on a different track entirely, anytime you hit that hot cue, it will immediately jump to that position and start playing. This is not true with regular memory cues. For memory cues, you have to manually call them up and then hit play. So if you want to set a hot cue, let's just delete this one that I already have set here. There is an easy way to do this, and that is using the Quantize button over here, this little green guy underneath the track artwork on the left-hand side here. When you have this Quantize button on, every time you go to set a point, it will automatically snap that point to the nearest beatgrid indicator. So if I have Quantize off, for example, and I go to set hot cue B, it's going to set a cue right where my middle cursor is, my white line here. But let's go ahead and delete that, turn Quantize on, and as soon as I press B to set the hot cue, it will snap it over to the nearest beatgrid. However, if I wanted to, for example, set the hot cue on this hat so that I could create like a cool effect out of the hat or whatever, I wouldn't be able to do that with Quantize on. So if we turn Quantize off, delete the cue, scrub to the exact position of the attack of the hat, and select there. Now, every time we hit that hot cue, it'll be right on that hat. And of course, you can also zoom in and out on the waveform. I'm sure you probably already figured that out though. You can also set loops into memory. So for example, if I want to store a loop of just the first like 2 bars, what I can do is I can set an in point on the loop, play, and then after 8 beats, hit out. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's quantized, so it'll automatically lock on. But this cue has not been stored yet. We've only just set it in live. To store it, we'd have to hit memory. And as you can see up here in the memory section, we have this little loop indicator immediately next to the time indicator. And we can also label this as like intro loop, etc., etc. Again, all of these are able to be labeled with whatever you want. And this isn't really super useful on current generation CDJs, but I have a feeling that this may become like a really useful feature in future generations of players that use Rekordbox. I can imagine like a player where on the screen, like an XDJ or whatever, there's little labels next to the waveform, and you can like zoom into the waveform in advance and see exactly what these are labeled as. Be like, oh, this is a breakdown. Oh, this is the intro kick, whatever. So I've kind of started labeling all this stuff, but I just don't know if it's going to be worth my time to go through a couple thousand tracks and label them all with 10 cues each. But so we just started a memory loop on this very beginning section of the track. And I also have a cue point there as well. So you can actually call back and forth. Right now I'm on the first cue. Right now I'm on the second cue, which is also an 8-beat loop. And then the third cue, fourth cue, fifth cue, so on and so forth. Another really cool thing you can do with loop cues is you can set them as hot cues, for example. So if I create a 4-beat loop, I can actually set this as hot cue D. And you can see it pops up over here as an orange letter D instead of green. And it does the same thing on the CDJ. It'll pop up as an orange letter instead of a green letter if it's a loop. And again, to get out of any of these loops, all you have to do is hit exit. So the last cool thing about setting loops as memory cues is you can actually set a cue as like an outro loop, where, say you're running out of time in your track and for whatever reason you miscalculated your incoming track and you are going to run out of time on this track before the most interesting part of the next track comes in. You can actually automatically set this to never expire when you're playing the track. So say we're getting to the very end here, we're at the outro, and we just want to set an 8-beat loop on permanent repeat once it automatically crosses that point. So we have this 8-beat loop set. We're going to hit memory, and then we see another loop indicator has popped up over here. If we hit this active loop button, it'll turn it into an active loop, which basically means that until we exit the loop, it's just going to keep going continuously, and it'll automatically enable the loop when it crosses that path. So if we hit play on the track back here, we see we just passed our first loop that we set, but that wasn't an active loop. And as soon as we pass this point here, it immediately turns red, and it'll automatically start looping. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so let's just say you were following along, you loaded up a track, and you've set those cue points that you want to set, but now you want to export them to your flash drive. Since all the changes that we just made to the track were made on your local drive and not on your flash drive, you need to export the file before the CDJ can even recognize the beatgrid or be able to do anything cool with it at all. There's a couple of ways of exporting. Directly in the collection, if you right-click on your track and then go down to Export Track and then select your device, it'll export to your device, and now you can unplug your flash drive, plug it into a CDJ, and be able to pull up all those memory cues that we just set. You can also export a track by loading it into a playlist. So in order to do that, first you have to have a playlist in existence. I have a couple over here for the past few months that I've been using. If you go ahead and drag your track over onto the playlist window, onto the playlist icon that you want to load it into, you can do it that way, or you can right-click, add to playlist, and then it'll be in that playlist, and then you can right-click on the entire playlist and export it, and then that will export all the tracks that are going to be loaded into that playlist in the exact order that you ordered or that you load them in. And remember, all the points that we set on here as far as memory goes, like hot cues, memory cues, active loops, whatever, those can all be modified on the CDJ as well. So if you get onto your CDJ and you decide that you want to change your hot cue positions, you can change your hot cue positions on the CDJ by using the record function. And then when you plug your flash drive back into your computer, you can actually update your settings on the file on your local hard drive. So it's a real good way of being able to like communicate back and forth between your local ecosystem of file management on Rekordbox and what you're playing out on your flash drive and adjusting at your gigs. Another really cool thing about the newest Rekordbox is that you can line up tracks side by side, and you can't really mix between them because Rekordbox is not a DVS or a digital vinyl or a playback software really at all. It's a library management software. So it's about being able to determine what tracks will go good together and exporting them in a meaningful way so you can play them back on CDJs. But we can still load up two separate tracks. We can set one as the master, and we can sync the other one, and we can see how they sound together. So if we just set, for example, an 8-beat loop here, we can bring the other one in and see how it sounds. And we can fade between them. You can also see how it sounds with master tempo turned off on either deck. You can speed them up simultaneously or slow them down simultaneously. Hit hot cues. If I could hit the right time. So let's see how the drop sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a pretty cool way of being able to determine if a track is going to go well with another track, so you can put them next to each other in a playlist and you don't have to worry too much when you get to the club or wherever you're playing that what you're going to do sounds good. So once you've gotten to the point where you're importing tracks regularly, you're setting, 5 or 6 cue points and a couple hot cues per track, you're really going to start to understand the Rekordbox ecosystem and why it's beneficial for DJs. It is a very simple program, yes, but it's very powerful in how you can organize everything. The one gripe that I maybe have about this is that the playlist organization is maybe not as in-depth as, say, like Serato or even Tractor, but you are able to create playlists. But if you could create sub-playlists, that would be game-changing right there. But for right now, we're just stuck with regular old playlists. And you can go in, you can rename them, you can add custom images. So when you're scrolling through, you can see like anything really. If you want to Photoshop some images together, that's usually what I do to get some laughs for those with acute vision. You also have these hot cue bank lists, which are basically 3 tracks that you can drag and drop, and basically when you select these on the CDJ, it'll automatically load up these 3 hot cues from these 3 separate tracks without you having to go to each track, load hot cue A, load hot cue B, load hot cue C. And so it's a cool way for people who maybe don't have like 4 CDJs, but they want to do really quick mixing between tracks. This is a great way to do that. I really hope you found this video somewhat useful for kind of delving into Rekordbox on a basic level, just to know what it does and how to do it. I'll have like some more advanced videos up, but I just wanted to get like this ultimate guide out there that's going to get you the information that you need right now so that you can start analyzing tracks and exporting them to your CDJs, and just making your life a whole lot easier when you go to play out. I know that once you experiment a little bit more with all these options and realize the real power behind it, you'll probably be wondering why you waited so long to switch over in the first place. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and check out the forthcoming videos on a lot more of the advanced features of Rekordbox. I hope to see you around. Thanks.